IIM Ahmedabad, Bangalore, Kolkata. These are the top MBA colleges in India. Getting into either of them is not a piece of cake. The journey to enter such institutes is definitely not a straitjacket approach, especially for the one-day exams where there are multiple factors that come into play. And making sure that all these factors are in our favor for that short exam time period is extremely challenging. This is where I found Manjunath's profile extremely inspiring. He was someone who would look at the question during the exam time, and his fear and tension would overpower his cognitive ability. He figured that out. Instead of letting that overpower him or crib about it, he took a positive approach, understood the situation, scenario, or the environment that worked with him, and gave as many mocks as he could, created an exam like environment for himself before the main day so that he could ace the main exam. So, if you're one of the students who feels stuck in an exam preparation and is not getting the desired outcome for his exams, then this is the video conversation for you. Stay tuned. Loyola is considered is in one of the top colleges in India, and definitely it is one of the coveted colleges down south. If you could just share a little brief of how those 3 years were you and how relevant it was in your personal and your professional journey.
Joining Loyola College gave me a lot of learnings in the personal space, largely when compared with the professional space. Personally, I got to meet a lot of people, understand what are the different things they aspire to, and there was a need for me to get a certain degree of clarity and conviction so that my efforts are in the right direction. So, if you look at the BCom degree as such, professionally, it's just a teaser to the world of finance. I have not come across someone who's like, this is one of the most toughest courses I have to crack. No, everyone found the BCom course to be very easy. So we had a lot of time at disposal. So what I considered to be the biggest learning of my life during that phase was my ability to utilize these time. How do I wipe out the noise, wipe out the distraction, and probably focus on things which I want to do, and either prepare for a better future or probably maximize my general awareness on both myself and the world in general. So that is what I kind of would take away as my biggest learning. Professionally, of course, as I mentioned earlier, it is just a teaser to the things that unfolded in the world of finance. You get a bit of law, bit of accounting, bit of management, and everything else. But we'd see that most of them would be balancing their pursuit towards a professional qualification during a BCom, or they would be preparing for an entrance exam of be it CLAT or be it CAT or be it anything else which they want to do. So that was what. So we had a lot of time at disposal. How we were going to manage the time, it was so valuable looking back. It was a very valuable time, and I had prioritized it, one to work on my fitness and another to work for the next 5-6 years. Like, how am I going to shape my professional journey? So that was what the crux of my 3 years was.
I think you have actually utilized it for your clarity purpose, the way you are putting it out. If you had your 5-6 years thought of, that's a very big step in terms of deciding, because having a plan is the first step in going ahead with things in a structured manner.
Yeah, there were a lot of diversions as such. To add to that point, is that you could have done a million things because you have so much time, and there's always people and friends who are around doing different things, right? Especially if you're in BCom or in any other BBA or any other likewise degree. So it is essential to pick your right company and ensure that you guys are also working towards the right angle. And yeah, I mean, looking back, I mean, all of my friends are also doing well. So I guess it's a pretty good thing.
Yeah, I think it's a very soft aspect. We don't understand if deciding the peers around us is extremely relevant, especially in the formative years of our career, which
Very
is
true.
college. Like,
Yeah.
extremely, that shapes us to a greater extent how we are thinking our career after college, and which is the major part, which is the execution part. College is the formative part, and after that, it's an execution part. How are they coming to the college opportunities? How are the placement scenario there? Like, if somebody wants to focus on placements, like after BCom, what's the scenario? What are the opportunities over there?
The opportunities are limited. Let me be very candid about it. It is probably the ones who focus the more or who wants it the more gets the job, That's as simple as it. There are very few openings from reputed firms which come in, because by nature, I guess, most of the companies would be slightly reluctant to hire from a commerce degree or a business degree when they could probably hire an engineering graduate for pretty much the same amount. So you're competing with those folks at some level, at a very macro level. You're actually competing with those folks at an entry level job immediately after your BCom. So given this constraints, it is a very rare opportunity to get a job. But if you strive, it does happen. We probably got around, just ICICI in itself had 25 openings. So you just have to be the top 25 to probably get in. So it is as simple as that. So if you
Okay.
want it, you would get it.
You need to be clear in wanting that job.
Yeah, that's pretty much the one line of it.
Yeah. So how, like, who all, so usually it's on the basis of the grading system or the overall profile, or how does it happen?
So yeah. Initially, they will look at your discipline in terms of your academics, past academics, right? That is a mark of discipline. I mean, as an external hirer, uh, they'll probably look at how your grades are over the years. If you're still at it, if you're very grade oriented or focused towards a particular discipline or something like that. So that is largely it, and they'll test your soft skill largely. I mean, depends on role. I'm just trying to generalize it, but at the end of the day, it's the role for which they come in. If they're coming for a front end sales role, it's going to be more soft skills driven.
Okay.
If it's going to be analytics, it's going to be more towards your ability to solve problems and stuff.
Can you give us a little brief of your interview experience at ICICI Bank, and how your role, also what your role exactly encompassed over there?
I'll probably just answer my role first so that it kind of makes sense on why they had that kind of process. So initially they were hiring for a trainee program, again, undergraduate trainee program, where they will deploy us in a front end role across the wealth management segment initially. So this was a national-wide hiring agenda. We had people all across the country, from SRCC to top colleges across the country, like Christ and whatnot. So given that the role, first 9 months of the role was about wealth management, where you go around selling uh, personal finance, uh, uh, personal finance solutions, to be very blunt.
Okay.
So it involved credit cards, mutual funds, life insurance, and everything else which comes under the wealth segment of a bank, which is ICICI. So given that, given the performance and how you fare up, some people eventually land up and continue their careers in wealth management, or they move towards a different function depending upon demand for that particular. So for my journey, I was in the first months deployed in wealth management around Chennai. So again, the same selling personal finance solutions to top clients of Chennai. And post that, I was shifted towards corporate banking, where it was again a front end role, but it was more sophisticated kind of selling, where you're now selling a solution which is far more complicated than a credit card or a mutual fund. So you're talking about bill discounting, you're talking about term loans, and a lot more complex things. We're talking with CFOs and the big treasury controls of big firms and everything. So that was a more enriching experience, because one, you get to meet a lot of old people who have done a lot of great work, 40, 30 years veterans who have been in this industry and are right now leading companies. You get to meet with them and kind of try and understand what is the business requirement. So in order to sell something over there, you need to understand how business works in general, their working capital cycles and everything. So that was the biggest learning experience in that particular role. In personal finance, in my stint in wealth, it was about behavioral economics, about a particular individual. How does an individual react, or how is it, possible to make a sale with a particular individual? And when it comes to corp banking, it was about understanding a firm, the working capital cycles, and how do we come and fit in solutions and everything around that. So that is my role and experience. But now coming back to the interview process, it had a GD, pretty generic round table GD, where the best points gets highlighted, and the one who is more coherent and has more clarity gets larger screen time to speak. And it is very important to get your buy-in when you're in a roundtable GD, so that you have to be convinced first, but also convince every other person in the panel as well, so that you get more time to speak. And that was the first challenge. I had to get the crux of it very quickly, and that went well. And it was a personal interview, which was largely an EQ test. They're just testing your emotional quotient on how you react to situations, if you're considerate or not. So that is how the interview process was.
More like a stress test interview, or like how an individual responds to different situations.
It wasn't a stress test, so as to say. It was like your willingness to work kind of a interview. Like they'll give you situations like, what if you're posted in Assam or Guwahati, to the northeast corners of the world? How can you probably work from there? Like how will you still be working there? So something of those on those lines were what was asked to me at that point of time. But there was not much of technical questions also in that role. It was more about, since it's a front end role, it's more about soft skills and how do I present myself at a particular point of time. So that is what they tested.
Quite comprehensively you've shared your role and your experience. So you got exposure into these technical terms of mutual funds and all of this pretty early on. So did your job role help you create awareness for your personal?
Exactly. Yeah, that was the biggest takeaway. I mean, I could build my own portfolio in a more informed manner because I knew how things are operating within the system, and so much so that how much commission I get whenever I sell a mutual fund. So I know that these are certain expenses which add up eventually to the customer, right?
Yeah.
So all those very nuanced details are something which I benefited while working with ICICI, and I could incorporate those when I was building my own equity and MF portfolio, so as to say.
Yeah, because I think one of the most connecting points of your role, from what I also found, was the personal wealth, because all of us ultimately focus after a couple of years on building this, and we realize this pretty late as in few years down our graduation. And if you've gotten it an exposure right in your first role after graduation, that's pretty early on, because your financial wealth starts developing after that.
True. I mean, I was exposed to SIPs and everything much earlier, so you could probably start compounding. And with COVID's ups and downs, we were still investing, so that would have been a great payoff. Like anyone who was invested during those periods had phenomenal returns when compared to today. So yeah, it is definitely a blessing to get this kind of a introduction to stock market very early, before the whole wave of demat accounts began, which is probably around 2019. So I was just about in time to capture it, so that before the retail demand pushes the prices, I was just in time. So yeah, lucky in that way.
Interesting. I think one of the very good takeaways from what I found, like awareness to something which is extremely important at a very early on in life.
Yeah. I think that is going to be the constant theme of this whole story of mine, at least. I always see that if I'm self-aware, I could probably solve everything and anything, because I kind of know where I stand, what needs to be done, and what is the gap in between, and everything just follows. So that is pretty much what I try to achieve even going forward.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. After your first corporate stint, you got into IIM, and you got into IIM Bangalore. IIM Bangalore is consistently rated in the top 3, and I think most of the time it's ABC, and I think it is going that, I think, since a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I can argue that's B first, but yeah, fine.
Okay, BAC, like, yeah, it's like top 3. I think top
Yeah, sure.
something which we can vouch for in a way.
Yeah.
And getting into these top ones requires not only your CAT preparation but a lot of nuances as well, because everybody would want to get into it. So please make us go through your how your preparation approach was. What were the few focus area if somebody who's here listening to this video conversation can keep in
Yeah.
mind, like thumb rules or something like that.
So it is definitely not a general prescription. Like I cannot give 10 things that you have to do to ensure that you get into IMB. That is definitely not going to work, because it's a very personalized prescription that each one of us needs. So it took me 3 attempts to land here, and each attempt I was defining my attempts. So it was a lot of back and forth in that sense. So I'll try to just give you the philosophy behind it so that it is universal to everyone. Uh, One thing I realized for me personally was I was very good with concepts. I had no problem with the basic concepts just tested in the exam, right? Uh, what was the problem? Major problem in me was the anxiety which comes in when I see a question pop up.
Okay.
So whenever I see a question in the screen, even though I know the easiest way to solve this, sometimes it doesn't work because I'm just tensed. And I figured this in my second attempt, while doing the second attempt, that it is not concepts, that it's just purely that I know everything, but I'm still not able to do it on the exam date. So that was the differentiating factor for me. Like, how do I solve for the anxiety, and how do I solve for the mindset while going to the CAT exam? So that is pretty much the difference between a good attempt and a very good attempt or an excellent attempt. So by second attempt was very good conceptually. I got all the bases covered. So the whole reason I went to the third attempt was just because of the mentality, which I ought to get it right during the third attempt. So how do I solve for the anxiety is to get used to the exam surroundings. So it was also luckily during COVID. The world was shut down and I got some time. So I used most of the time in giving mocks. I went all out. I did couple of mock series from the leading test takers, and that kind of made me used to the whole setup of this exam. Like to sit in one place 3 hours and not be afraid of this question popping up on the screen was achieved only after, say, a good 30, 40 marks. So that itself was a big win for me. And that I think is the most fundamental change on what made my good attempt and an excellent attempt. So that is what I'll say work for me. But for someone else who's just starting out, maybe you should first focus on getting your bases covered, get the concepts clarity wise all sorted, and quickly jump on to conditioning yourself to the exam, as I term it. All the mocks and all the sectional exams you take is just conditioning to the exam so that you don't feel alien while taking this exam, right? So a few of them I've always been okay with my English, so I found it very natural. But for some people, it need not be the case. So I think inculcating a reading habit also helps. So right from childhood, I used to read newspapers, so it was just a natural extension. But for someone who is not doing that drill, it's essential to ensure that you put in a conscious effort to kind of read a lot more. And apart from that, I think just conditioning yourself to the exam helps a lot. And how well you are conditioned to face that particular question, one question at a time, and how you move on to the next question is all that matters at the end of the day.
That's very insightful in a way, that a small detail, basically keeping yourself in the exam environment way before the exam, so that the exam environment is very familiar to you.
Yeah, that is probably the one liner of the whole thing which worked for me. It need not be the same case for everyone else because my condition was such. I could figure out that this is what I was lacking and this is what something I had to work on. And the end of the day, it worked in the end. Um, so it happens to people. Like you'll have to figure out where you are lacking, where you're finding it hard, and what is that one thing which is not making your attempt really wonderful. So once you figure that out, you can probably find out your answers for yourself.
Yes, for Kiki, because for some people it might not be this fear, this might be maybe the concepts. But maybe
Yeah.
for someone, like, so it's like it can be divided into two parts. First is the concepts, you build a concept and then you execute them. For execution, I think the best way is to keep yourself in the exam environment, and one of that can be very easily achieved by giving uh quite a decent number of mocks.
Yeah. So, I mean, uh, just to get the fear out of it, it took me 30 more. So after that, I had to refine, get that accuracy right, and everything else, the time within that particular time frame and everything else, that will take an additional effort. So it just goes on. I cannot prescribe key you have to do 100 mocks and you will be okay. No, that is also not possible. For me, it might be 150. For someone else, it might be just 20. I have a lot of batchmates who just told me that they just woke up before the exam and they're just in. So, I
Without giving
mean,
mocks?
there are a lot of people who just woke up the day before exam without any preparation and just got in with the highest score possible. So, that is exactly why I'm saying that it can't be a general prescription. There are people who can probably ace it right from on the day go. So, it just depends on person to person. End of the day.
Yeah. I would love to meet those people who've just gotten up and then gone for the exam.
There are quite a lot of people. If you do visit campuses,
Are they from
you'll
the
see.
science background?
Yeah, largely from the IITs, but there are a lot of people from the economics background too, who I met uh, in IIM Bangalore, who have done this, who just woke up the other day and just scored that 99 percentile plus. So it happens for them.
I don't. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. It. You have to believe at the end of the day, it just happens. For some, it's one attempt, one day going well. For some people, it's like me, it will be three attempts going their way. So this happens. Everyone has their own time.
To each his own. So, as we are discussing, like the day of the exam is extremely relevant because, as you said, like there are some people who've just exam day. So, what can a student look forward to, or what they can keep in mind when they're going for the exam day or the exam,
Yeah.
the main exam center?
So I think a calm mind helps. More, at least for me. I'm not sure how others work. A calm mind will ensure that I think properly.
Hmm.
So my exam day preparations was to ensure that I'm calm, I'm confident, and I'm not second guessing or doing anything of the sort. So just that was very key. But there are small things which people do miss out. Like for example, logistical reasons can sometimes be very detrimental because I've heard stories where extremely talented people who I trained with during coaching and everything for CAT just missed out on the great 90 percentile or 99 percentile mark because they didn't get the logistics right. Logistic matlab, getting to exam on time, ensuring that you're comfortable with the surroundings.
Hmm.
So I had a friend who had a punctured tire on the day before exam. He was late, he was tensed, and hence everything got tanked. So
Oh,
so all these are something which are small things which can be very detrimental. So while you're preparing so much around the year for this one exam, which comes once in a year, I think it is fair that you give a lot of attention, that you are very secured and confident while you go to the exam. Be probably a couple of hours earlier to the exam center, be on time, and give the exam in a very peaceful manner instead of just rushing in. Because what happens is that eventually your calm mind is what is going to prepare you to get that excellent score, and that is probably is a differentiator between me and someone else. So. Someone who withstands that kind of a pressure at that point of time is more preferred towards someone who probably falters in that position. So that is the entire system of things. And going back, you just have to be comfortable with the center. Just get comfortable with seeing 1,000 computers right in front of you, and just people that determined to somehow make it. Everyone's just staring at that computer wanting to get that one question right. So you just have to be slightly unaffected by it, because I remember my first attempt, I was just baffled seeing so many heads in one place. It was in an IT office, if I remember. I think it was a typical TCS kind of an office. There were a lot of cabins, and there were just people everywhere who were just looking into the screen. I was just taken aback just by the mere sight of it. So, I mean, giving a lot of exams also helps. If not CAT, there's ZAT, there is IIFT, there is SNAP, and I used to give exams around the year. So once you keep expanding your D-Day preparations, like once you keep getting used to the D-Day also, it becomes easier and it becomes more familiar. So, and for me, again, I just go back to the main position where once I'm familiar with everything, I'm more calm and I'm able to give the best results. So that is what worked.
I think we can summarize this by saying disciplined. Like if you're giving an exam, be disciplined about it. Be on time. Have all your stationery. Like very small things. Like be a kid when you're giving an exam. Like follow rules. Like it's easier. Like you can definitely do what one feels like, to each their own, but it just helps you to not be anxious about something which is not relevant.
Yeah, I mean, there are some people who probably are okay coming in the last minute and still being
Yeah.
calm. I mean, it's again not a general prescription, but things which work for me and from what I've seen is like it's okay to be there early, be there very, in a very shrewd manner and do the boring things like doing the same mock exam again and again and being there much before time so that all those things don't worry you much. So yeah, that is pretty much my conservative approach on this.
Yeah, it is like it just like from whatever my personal experience has been over exams, it has also been more like that I would rather clear this and be sorted with it and take care of these so that I don't have the headache of looking at the books again. So
Yeah, so see, it makes sense if some question is very tough and you are really taken aback by the sheer goodness of the question or the sheer quality of the question. But if you're taken aback because you were late to the exam or due to some other ancillary reason, I mean that is more criminal to yourself, right? You're just letting yourself down at that point of time.
yeah, I agree. I agree. It's like basically, being just disciplined about whatever you're doing.
Yeah,
It's not
and it
only
just maximizes your chances of scoring it right.
a little brief on how your journey of 2 years of IIM Bangalore was. A little brief how it is. I think college days are one of the best days. A little brief on
Yeah,
that.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, you'll find a lot of my counterparts just talking about Lens on how wonderful the campus life is. Initially, I couldn't understand what was happening on because there's a lot of things was happening. We were in our own homes initially for the first few weeks. But then once got into campus, that is when I understood what an MBA is. I
Okay.
mean, before that, it was just another course.
Hmm.
But once you land on the campus, once you're in the same room with these wonderful minds across the world, across India at least, there's a few world people also, but yeah, largely across India, you understand how things are, how you go about solving one problem. There's a lot of structure which comes in. So one biggest takeaway from my MBA was the structured thinking. Before I was just thinking all over the place, but I think it is also because of my CAT preparation as well as it just carries on towards the MBA also. You're most thinking in structures, thinking about you're staying in the moment and thinking about the process instead of the end result. So that is what I think is about MBA. But then there's also the social life where you meet very interesting people from different backgrounds, uh, from media, from petroleum industry, from whatnot, fintech, and a lot of other people from different things, doing different things in life, but you are in the same classroom with them for that particular moment, discussing a particular subject and trying to come out with some kind of a solution, which is universal again. So those were something which were really something which you asked, which I personally worked for. Given, I mean, if I look back, immediately after getting my undergraduate degree, I was still not satisfied with my abilities not being fully used. So it is safe to say that my full abilities were used and exploited largely in IIM Bangalore, and you get to do things which are which you can drive, and there'll always be people who has done this or who has some idea about this. So that is something which is the biggest plus point on it. You can always develop in and out in that space. It's a very great space for learning. The professors are also really good. They are very welcoming. You won't come across someone who's very rude or something of the sort. Everyone's very welcoming. They appreciate the ability to think in a different way, and they're not stuck with the particular assumption of management. They understand that management is an evolving field and things keep changing. So yeah, I mean, adaptability and dynamism are just part and parcels of each and everything this course and management was all about. So yeah, that is a
This is
brief.
very nice to hear. Like an open platform where people can grow. I think that's one of the best things. And someone who reaches in an institution like IIM Bangalore, they are not just, if an open platform is given to them, it's not like they'll get carried away. They are quite, I'm sure they must be rational about it. They would utilize it and maximize it to the best usage. And like, because the reasons why structures and disciplines are in place so that people don't get carried away. So, but once you are a lot more in control of how you are looking at things, how you're taking things, and an open platform and is just an add-on, like it enhances a lot of your personality and makes you know those parts those aspects of your attitude which were maybe not that explored well.
Right. And it's largely about peer learning, right? You get inspired by a lot of people around you. I think that is, I mean, not taking anything aside, but these are small candid and nuanced things which I'm trying to highlight here, which sometimes goes unnoticed, is the immense effect of what your peers have on you. There's a lot of good things which I could see and pick and choose from the best of the people there. And yeah, I mean, that is one of the biggest takeaway too. I could see a lot of people doing a lot of things right. I can choose things which I can incorporate myself and not do things which doesn't resonate to myself. So again, that is also there.
And that's very relevant. Even I think after education, ensuring that your circle is very clean and growth oriented is extremely relevant. Like it is very easy to get when you are in an institution, but after that it requires an effort. And having the right sort of people can solve a lot of half of your things, like in terms of going in the right direction.
Right. And it's also about the team spirit which kicks in, right? You just don't want you to do well. You want everyone else also to be really up to the mark. So even as I said earlier, the biggest achievement for me, the biggest things I'm really happy about is the first few friends I found in my UG degree are doing really well in life. So that is something which I really pride myself, because not that I chose them or something else. No, just because we were able to create that kind of a growth environment where and we are able to reap benefits out of it right now. So it's easier to do that in an MBA because everyone knows what they want to do in life at this point of time, or at least they know that these are the basic disciplines which have to do. But to get that kind of a clarity and conviction in UG is something which I pride myself over, and to probably share it with a group of people is something which is really beautiful, and to see everyone prosper eventually is also a great highlight for me.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah, absolutely. A little brief on how your interview experience was at Pine Labs back in college. A
Yeah.
little brief on the rounds and what all did each round cover.
So just like my undergraduate interview, it was again GD, which was on UPI. So I had done a lot of research on fintech space, just in general, because I wanted to be aware, because it's one of the most happening spaces in today's world, especially in India. India is driving the fintech revolution, and undoubtedly everyone needs to be on top of this, especially if you're in a business degree. So it was one of my focus areas. So the group discussion was about UPI and how India is shaping the fintech revolution using UPI and everything else. So I was fairly up to date on the latest insights on whatever that was there on NPCI's website and everything. So it was fairly comfortable for me. Uh, Post that, so this happened one day earlier. The next day we had a personal interview, uh, where I was interviewed by my manager, and he asked questions related to the basics of finance, economics, and there are a lot of grilling happening in terms of the concepts, clarities, and everything. There were a few errors here and there, but they were very gracious to accept me in the role eventually.
No, but okay. Thank you. So basically GD plus PI. And
Yeah.
over here, few technical GD to UPI. Basically, I think GD was covering what the organization was dealing into to a greater extent. And
Yeah, everything was rooted on fintech. I mean, every question, even though they were conceptually challenging, also it tied back to fintech eventually. And I mean, that was probably one of the best structured interviews I've given. I've just given 2 interviews, of course, but this was again one of the most well structured, because you know that everything ties back to banking or fintech or something of the sorts. So it or to the role which I was going in. So that was also pretty good.
like any one project work stream that you've come up so far, like I know just a couple of months, any work stream that was a little interesting for you, and
Yeah,
to the extent you can share, if you can share.
yeah. So I genuinely liked the investor relationships piece. It kind of gives you a deep insight about your own business. Every query we receive is an opportunity for us to learn about the own business. And by the business, you mean it's again going back to learning fintech's basics. So I think that is one of the most interesting aspects. While there are a lot of critical projects also which is going on around the year, I find this activity to be more engaging and interesting, because there's a lot of learning space in this ever growing and ever changing fintech space. You are on top of what the things are happening in your organization, and how an external party kind of determines or asks questions about your business. So that is also a very interesting takeaway which you get while you interact with investors. So that is another interesting activity I just like to do in my organization.
A different angle or maybe a perception and more deep, which gives you an opportunity to deep dive further into what you're doing.
True, very true. And in a normal scope of things, it kind of gives you that time to go into the specifics of things, right? Instead of just being superficial and being over the top, when you have to address an investor query, you have to go deep into the details and find out the real answer behind it. So that is something which is challenging. That is something which you have to do it with a greater degree of clarity and conviction. So again, that is something which is very interesting to me.
So going back to again your college days, any advice that you would give to someone who's in school or maybe in undergraduation and they're going for their PG? How can they make the best use of their 3 years or 2 years?
That's a very tough question to ask, to be honest. But I think one common philosophy is self-awareness, which I'd say across all 3 levels of your education. If you're aware on what you want to do and where do you want to go, then half of your problems are solved. There's no regrets, at least. Once you look back, you won't feel that why have I not done this over that, because you took a rational call that look, this is me, I want to do this. So that is what I go about it. There's no FOMO, if I have to put it in the latest term. But yeah, if you want me to go into specifics, I think once immediately after school, I mean, just ensure that you get into a good college. I mean, as much as people say that degrees don't matter, your knocking door is often the reputation of your college, and it kind of has, a lasting impression on any interviewer, to be very frank. And so even I had a chance to go settle for a different college, which wasn't ranked pretty as high as Loyola, but I chose Loyola because of its sure reputation at that point of time. So Similarly, I think there's no need to talk about IMB's reputation as well. So it is just an extension. Just ensure that you're in the right places, you accumulate the right tags, and obviously things will happen. Not that it guarantees success. It's not for you to be complacent, but at least you can work on things better, and it will be a door opener for you wherever you go. So that is the thing for school. For undergraduation, I mean, just be clear on what you want to do and have conviction. There's a lot of noise in undergraduation. Just get rid of noise and do things which you're passionate about. And sometimes you have to take a brave decision in undergraduation. So I personally had to take a decision of not doing a CA course and pursuing this. So I mean, it was very tempting to go that way too, but then it was a tough call, and eventually it paid off, so it's okay. But yeah, it is a risky decision, but you have to back your decision at the end of the day. So that is the second piece on undergraduation. So if I look at post graduation, I'd probably, if I had to do something different, maybe I'd probably talk to a lot more people. Yeah, it would have been much more easier because these guys are going to be the top leaders of tomorrow, and there's no doubts in that. But I had underestimated my ability to socialize and my time. I usually don't allocate time way back in MBA. I was more focused on academics and others. Maybe looking back, not that I regret it, but if I have to change something, maybe give a lot more time to socializing and find out what people are up to.
Hmm. Nice. Thank you. I think the first part, cutting out the noise, is quite significant because after 11 and 12, that's the age where we are not sure of what we want to do, most of us. And getting lost in that noise can happen
Yeah,
very.
it's largely driven by your peers also. Like, so, you know, just for instance, I was very clear on the things which I could do. I was very clear that I can't go outside of Chennai and leave my home and live somewhere else to do a UG. So I was very sure that I would be easily, captivated by something else, or just the sheer peer pressure would just take me to do a lot of things.
Hmm.
So if I have to be in control of things, I was very grounded, and it somehow occurred to me that I had to stay at home and get things done. So it was a time when I really, you had to take things up in your own stride and work things off. So all those conscious decisions one has to take, conscious and big decisions one has to take. And as much as it sounds fancy, it is a very tough call, and that is the sad reality of it. I mean, you're making 18-year-olds take very life-changing decisions, which is not true, which is not good. I mean, uh, it's okay. I mean, you can't expect everyone to do great at that point. I mean, there's a lot of chance you're not sure about the world, you're not seeing the world fully, and yet you're here trying to take life-changing decisions. So that is how unfair it is at times. But yeah,
So at the age of 18, you were clear that you did not want to go to outside Chennai because you would have been, maybe the path would have been. That's a very
yeah,
practical approach at a very young age. I mean, very
yeah. I mean,
habit.
there were peers of mine who were going abroad for undergraduate as well. They were going outside Chennai. I think DU is a popular spot, right? For any commerce grad, it's probably a dream, but it was never part of my dream because I know that I probably needed my family to be around at that point of time. I was very naive at 18, to be very frank. All my world was just school and family and just a couple of friends here and there. I mean, all that was my exposure, right? So to go out in Delhi was definitely not in part of my plan. I mean, I know that I can't go there, so
Fine, like
it was very clear.
it's accepting. It's basically what surprises me is that knowing this fact and accepting it is a very bigger thing. Like there are many people who don't. They maybe whine or they crib ki, okay, I stayed back. I could have gone out easily. Instead of looking at it that way, you were very open to this and you were like, yes, no, I don't want to go out, whatever the reasons are. I want to stay here.
I mean, yeah, I was very susceptible. That is also true. At that age, whatever my friends did were cool. And more often than not, I figured out that it is not, they are also just like me, and they're just doing something based on someone else who's doing. So it's just a sheep mentality which is going on. So you had to cut that at some point. You need a root of things, and I chose to root myself in Chennai. And I think that is also applies for why I didn't go for foreign MBA, because eventually, I mentioned that I took a lot of exams, but I didn't take a GMAT because I knew that I want to work here. I don't want to go there and work there. So a foreign degree probably just works abroad. May not be great at India. You never know. There are people who are doing it, but essentially, if you're getting a foreign degree, you have probably more likely to get a job abroad. So that is also a clarity which I had, that look, I like to travel and all, but definitely want to stay here and work here. So getting an Indian degree is what I had to do, and how do I maximize that? So it's kind of defining the scope myself and kind of trying to maximize within that boundaries. That is what is
Very
lacking behind things.
I think you are a perfect example of someone who defines his scope and then, tries to maximize it, as you just said. Very
Yeah.
interesting.
I
Yeah, I
mean,
think, sorry, you were saying?
yeah, I mean, that is basically what self-awareness is about. I mean, at 18, I knew I needed my home to support me. That's pretty much like that. At every point, I knew that this is certain things I need, and this is where I can operate in a very sane manner or a rational manner. So, in order to prioritize my ability to handle situations, I had to create my own boundaries. And looking back, I won't have regrets also. So obviously, DU would have been a great job. Would have been a great place to be, or a foreign MBA would have been really empowering. But I know that given my constraints, which I of course create to myself, it is probably what I am currently is probably the best I can be. So no regrets at the end of the day.
Quite interesting. Very interesting, in fact. And very different from the conventional thought process. But wrapping it up, and thank you so much for taking out time on a weekday,
Yeah,
and that too a Monday weekday. And
yeah, pleasure.
and for all the structured and a very practical approach to things. Thanks a lot.
Yep, it was a pleasure. Good luck with this venture, and hope you keep changing minds, creating an impact in a lot of people, and also do a lot of positive things. Thank you.
Thank you so much.